Oh, jeez.
Good timing, Dan. All right, welcome everybody to Ektron Office Hours. Should know better than to do that at 2 o'clock.
I know. I'm
So
sorry.
this Office Hours, we're going to be letting the normally very capable Dan McGarry give us a how-to on prepping a website for event tracking using Google Analytics. I've also brought into this conversation Dick Sterry, who's going to be providing a bit of the business insight into why we'd want to do this, and Ken to ask really, really good questions. So with that, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. Dan, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, Dan McGarry. I basically am Avantes Web Solutions. I've been working on the Ektron framework for probably about 8 or 9 years now, since the 7.0 days, and I'm an Ektron partner.
All right, thanks. And Dick?
Yeah, this is Dick Sterry. I'm product manager at Ektron, and I've been working between Google Analytics and a lot of the sorts of tracking mechanisms for a number of years, mostly from the outside in terms of what customers would like to see.
Great, and Ken?
I'm Ken McAndrew. I'm a senior technology consultant with Celerity, Ektron partner, and strangely, I didn't shave today, and apparently I have the absolute least of the four of us in terms of epic facial hair, I just must say.
I blame my lack of shaving on my 3-year-old getting me out of bed about 20 minutes early this morning and occupying my entire morning. So
in that case, I blame my dog each and every morning.
Go for it. I'll take it. So just a reminder for everybody, we do take questions live via Twitter using the EktronOH hashtag. So if you have a question, whether it's about Google Analytics, whether it's about Ektron or web development in general, please feel free to send us a tweet, and we'll answer your question as they come. So with that, Dick, I'd like for you to give us a little bit of an introduction into kind of what is Google Event Tracking, why it's a good thing, how we would use it, etc.
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. Basically, event tracking allows you to track separately from the normal Google stuff the Google Analytics stuff that you would look at, the GA stuff like PageViews and bounce rate and all that sort of stuff. So this is completely separate, and it allows you to track an event. And you might want to do that. I mean, I would think that if you're hosting an event, you may want to track that separately. It gives you the opportunity to track links to that event separately, and so you can treat it more like a campaign. And it allows you to really set it up as an event itself. So I think that's why most people use it.
So an event really is just custom defined. It's really some kind of an ambiguous thing inside Google Analytics.
You can make it whatever you want. It's basically whatever you want to call it. So
what are some of the types of events that you've seen people push into Google?
What I've done in the past, the sorts of events are things like when somebody wants to do a webinar, we would track that separately. Or if somebody wanted to do a specific event where they're having a round table, there might be you might want to track those sorts of events separately, with separate metrics, and those sorts of things.
Right, so you can actually track, say, not just when somebody lands on a page and leaves a page, which is what Google does by default, but you can say they clicked on this specific link, not just as this is the next page that they went to, or you can say it's just JavaScript to push that event in. And so you could even trigger it on how far somebody scrolled down on a page or how long they stayed on a page. Things
absolutely, absolutely. So you get, to some extent, you get more granular information, which is great. I mean, that's a lot of people want that. So I think that's the real benefit of it.
Yeah. So how does that impact decision making? Because people really need to use analytics in general for decision making. So how does that type of
Well,
granular event tracking impact decision making for your
right.
site?
I think you get a better feeling for engagement in how engaged they are. I also think you get a better feeling for whether or not they're how much they're paying attention, really. So really, like I say, it gives you more granular measurement of what you're looking for than just a gross page view.
Right.
So.
I think it also.
Go ahead, Dave.
Go ahead, kid. Okay. It also helps you. Let's say you have, in an example that I'm going to show in a minute, the client in this case had a couple page elements on their homepage that they really wanted to see. Okay, well, how are site visitors interacting with these particular elements? And they were kind of like what I would call a carousel. It had an image, a title link, and then a click here for more at the bottom. And realistically, from traditional Google Analytics, you could tell, okay, well, tracking, somebody came into the homepage and somebody went to that, followed that call to action, but which image, which link did they click on? Did they click on the title? Did they click on the read more? Did they click on the image? There's no way to trap that level of granularity unless you take it to the event tracking level. And to me, I mean, I understand that that event is an extremely generic term when we're talking about this, but I do tend to look upon it very much from that developer mindset of that I am tracking a particular event, so an interaction with an element on the page. So my 2 cents there.
Yeah, when at one point with one of my clients, they switched on their homepage from a model where you clicked on an item and it would go to a new web page to you click on an item and it would bring up a modal. Now, modals definitely won't trigger anything in your event logs, so we were using the event tracking there to track that, okay, this modal was clicked, and then you can pass it, since you can categorize, you can do the category, subcategory, and pass it a value name, like say like the title of whatever the article was. It would pop that modal open, and then we had several links on there to see, okay, once you had the modal open, what did you do? Did you close the modal? Did you go to a more page? And so if you're changing your user experience, you could use events as a way to see, is my methodology validated, or are people like just escaping back out? Should I have just kept it the way it was? So, I mean, you can use like analytics goals and things for such stuff as well, but especially in the day and age where more stuff is being done asynchronously, and your web logs won't necessarily track something, which means that your page tracker won't necessarily fire off. Event tracking is a great way to capture that granularity.
Yeah, so you're getting into not just page analytics, but in using events, you can get into behavioral analytics.
If you want to, yeah, it's very flexible.
Yeah. So Dan, with that, why don't you go ahead and share out your demo? Let's take a look at how you're incorporating.
I was just going to interject that the good news, bad news part of this is that in order to do that, you've got a little more work to do to track it down to that granularity. So it takes a little more work from a developer's perspective, but the payoff can be much higher in terms of knowing what people were looking at.
Yeah, I agree. That's absolutely right. And Dan, from our conversation a couple of weeks ago, I think what you're doing is you're trying to build it in by default to at least have the option to do that.
Yep, absolutely. So let me see here. Did I? What we realized is that it was a lot easier to just bake it in for 90%. Now, realistically, we didn't bake it into the main menu system. But what we did do is whenever we had any sort of call to action or listing pages, we just went ahead and built it in. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to highlight a couple things here. The first that I want to highlight is this is from, can everybody see? This is from Google's developer in setting up event tracking. Basically, you're just gonna. What we want to do is be able to call this track event method, and this is just like your standard Google page track. There are two required fields: category and action, and then a number of optional fields: label, value, non-interaction, and I believe implicit count comes up as well. But I mean, you can just Google, no pun intended, event tracking, and you'll eventually, you'll be guided to this page, and there's a wealth of information here on just sort of interacting with the Google APIs in order to facilitate this. Now, what we did,
Well, before you get into that, one thing I want
Yep.
to point out is that you're looking at the older JavaScript for Google. There
Yeah.
are now two versions, right? There's the regular Google Analytics and there's Universal
Yep.
Analytics. You're looking at the regular Analytics. It's a different call if you're using the Universal Analytics. So if your embed code for Google Analytics doesn't have ga.js, if it has, I think it's analytics.js, then you're using Universal Analytics. You want to make sure you're using the right API methods for the right version of Google Analytics.
Fair enough. Yep. Point well taken. So one of the things that we knew that we wanted to, am I still sharing my screen?
No.
All right. Okay. So let's screen share. There we go. We knew that we wanted to basically pass in the category and the action. That obviously those were required fields. That anything beyond that was gravy from interacting with that API. So what we did was, and I don't know if this is going to come up or not. I should probably go back to Hangouts, screen share. Pardon me for a minute. We piggyback on top of the HTML5. There is a part of the HTML5 specification states that we can have these data attributes. So if you put an attribute on a link field, or really on any well-formed tag, data slash or data dash is a wealth that the browser will render that. It won't object to it. It's part of the HTML5 specification. So what we were able to do was for everywhere that we wanted to invoke this tracking, was we baked in data action, data label, and data category. And since we knew that this was coming from, we have a single control that renders all three of these components, these elements, and they're defined through smart forms in the CMS. That, well, the data category for this particular control was, we hard-coded that to homepage carousel. On other areas, depending on where the control was being embedded on the page, and we made it an optional property on the controls, we can pass to it at runtime where the control itself is being rendered. So category is one. Label gets taken directly from, and this comes, this is something that Ken alluded to a little earlier, came directly from the title of the content record itself. And for this purpose, because we're looking at the label, the action is title link. So we then have a jQuery. On DocReady, we've got a jQuery function that loops through and looks to see for every anchor link that has a data label attribute, attach an event handler to that then calls the Google tracking method. and I can show you an example of that in a second. But this way, fundamentally, we're able to distinguish between the image link, the label link, or the more link down at the bottom. So you could have a call to action, as it were, that's the slide 1 on carousel 1, and the exact same call to action could be on slide 2 of carousel 2 with different text, different title, different image, different different blur below it, but fundamentally driving to the exact same location. And this would allow marketing folks to basically to see what if they want to set up KPIs around their efforts, which I'm sure they would probably want to do. This allows them to see, okay, well, which is tracking better with their site visitors on a whole. So that's it in sort of a nutshell overview. And what we decided was that this works so well, we just automatically baked into everywhere that we're generating a link, other than the main navigation, we're just automatically adding in that data action, data label, and data category, to the point where we had a subsequent project where it wasn't a stated requirement for that project, but we just carried that forward, and because it's just so low-hanging fruit that when somebody, the client comes back and says, hey, we'd really like to be able to track this one this one component in this way, what's it going to take to do that? The answer is, all we got to do is add a jQuery function to attach the event handler, and you're done.
So in this case, Daniel, it looks like on that site, it looks like the value of that might be to do some ABC testing over those images, and maybe they want to look at those stats every other week or something.
It's along those lines, yeah. This wasn't a page builder page. There were some fairly stringent responsive requirements for this. Not that page builder violates that in any way, shape, or form, but yeah, that's along the lines of what they were looking for. And the other thing too is, you can think about it. From a rotating banner standpoint, you may have a completely different image, a completely different set of text, but you're driving traffic into the exact same page. Now, how do you know which image, what resonated most? And yes, A/B testing or multivariant testing would facilitate that, but if you don't have page builder, if it's not a page builder wireframe template, then this is a way to definitely achieve very similar results. Yep.
Now, see, with this, I see a couple of ideas you could do with it, I think. And you could do it on the widget level, or you could do it on a smart form level if you're using a smart form to generate the content. And that is adding in fields for, like, in the widget, maybe a default set of tracking codes. In the smart form, maybe fields for specific codes, for at least for your category and your the two required fields. And the other thing I could see adding in there would be a do you want to track this option, so you can easily say, all right, for this widget, I don't want to track this. For this smart form, I'm not tracking this. And that way, you can always include the tracking JS. But you don't have to track analytics on every item that you don't want to. The great thing about Google, at least with events, is you don't have to do extra setup for it. You just say, here are the events, and it just starts picking it up.
Yeah, those are absolutely fantastic points, and actually, Ken, that's actually, we took it definitely to that level in a couple ways. One was we had default values baked into the ASCX themselves, and we allowed for the templates, any templates that actually embedded those controls to pass in values at runtime to overload any of the defaults. So those two are, obviously that's you're thinking right along the same lines as we did. The other thing is we did in a couple different instances, we did add a toggle onto the smart form, the associated smart form that was track this, or I forget the exact wordsmithing of it, but it was basically a track checkbox. That would and at that point, because of the way that the jQuery that attaches the handler is written, at that point we're just not setting a value on, I believe, the label, the category and the action we set regardless, but the label was the one that was always very, very specific to the individual record in the CMS.
But you could also have a data attribute for just tracking enabled or something like that. That's a Boolean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really open-ended.
Well,
so we have a couple of questions on Twitter. Sorry to interrupt, Dan.
No, it's okay.
So Yesenia, I think she's got her answer via Twitter, but I want to get this into the video as well. Does data something work with universal tracking or old GA or both? And I think the answer there is that the data attributes Dan's referring to are not anything that's specific to Google Analytics. It's just something that is in the HTML5 spec that Dan's taking advantage of with his own JavaScript to submit those events. It's a way of tying the right data to the object that you want to track.
Yep, absolutely.
So a follow-up question, a different question. Is there a best practice on how many custom events should be tracked on a given page? Is there a number that should not be exceeded? So I'll let you guys, whoever wants to, field that one.
Theoretically, I would think that there's no theoretical limit. One thing I think you have to consider in terms of your page load might be, for every one of these, I imagine, Dan, your script is having to write out the GAQ.push track event code for every one of these, or is it some sort of generic thing where it's like on click it says it fills it in from the data attributes? Is it just like a single?
It's a generic. Okay. What we're doing is we're attaching a generic function to all of those anchor tags that fall under the category that that are within a particular class that have where the attribute is not null, where the data label attribute is not null. So you think about it that way. The overhead is in how long does it take for the jQuery library to attach that handler once the DOM is ready. Once you've hit doc ready, then what is the overhead? If you have 10 million anchors on a page, then I don't what is it? There's got to be an X number of milliseconds each, So
I think there might be. I mean, from an outside in point of view, I mean, if you get too granular with this thing, you can go crazy with the amount of data you get back, and it just doesn't make sense at some point.
I agree. This came from a client request where A/B testing or multivariate testing wasn't an option, and they wanted to track a certain level of granularity that this, the HTML5 specification afforded us this avenue that is fairly elegant. And another aspect to it too is if you wanted to attach events to other elements on the page that were not anchors themselves, you could do that through basically this, through jQuery as well. Attach the same and call. Basically, you're invoking the same event handler. So
yeah, I think that there's not really so much a concern around hitting a technological limit. I don't think Google's going to limit you on the number of events that you can pass. Not that I'm aware. They have limits on their APIs that you hook into via OAuth or API keys. They have like a 50,000 request limit on that. But I think as far as pushing data in, I don't think they have any limit around that. But I agree with Dick. I think that there's a practical limit to how much data you really want to mentally process and filter through that you're pushing into that Google Analytics. And it really depends on what decisions you need to make on that page.
Yep.
So
yeah, I mean, I don't. You know, I haven't seen the script, of course. You know, there's a code library for that, Dan. And but one thing I could think of is you could do, like, if you just, when you're writing in all these data attributes, if you write in a class as well, that's like, you know, like a fake class, and then you could just, the script could be, you know, dot whatever, and then, you know, grab the values from it, like check if the values are there, and if so, you know, do your values and just do event prevent default and all that, to maybe do it.
Ken, I don't think we're really all that far afield. I mean, this is really about 5 or 6 lines of JavaScript, if that. And that's because it was in an if-then, you know, we're checking, and I think there's still a remmed out alert in there. So you know, it's really not that big of a, you know, it was pretty straightforward. You know, and I think that this comes back to, or you know, I mean, Dick, certainly there is a balance here. You know, you could end up with a huge amount of data in your Google Analytics that you know, you just never, it's going to be worthless because it's too much information. So I hear what you're saying. I'm just looking at it from a technical standpoint. I leave it up to the marketers. If it's too much, we can always ratchet it back fairly easily. So.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, what it really boils down to is making decisions. What data do you need to make decisions from a marketing perspective? You know, maybe you want to know, maybe what somebody clicked on is not as important to you as how long they were on the page, and so you would set up a different type of event for different types of activities, but you need to figure out what activities are important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, with this client, they had multiple landing pages that they were going to be pushing through various marketing channels out, and to see what calls to action resonated on which pages. You know, this was significant to their marketing team. So.
Right. So we've got a couple of minutes left. I do want to announce that next week there will not be an Ektron office hours on Wednesday. I don't know. I think that there could be something else going on next week. So we've got Ektron Synergy next week, and I will be actually completely booked on that Wednesday, helping out with the training activities that are going on that day. So there won't be enough office hours on Wednesday. However, there will be an Ektron Office Hours Live event at Synergy, where we'll have a large number of people, at least for office hours. We'll have several people on stage at Synergy, and we'll have a couple of people joining online. We will still be doing the Google Hangout, and I will be sending out the reminder email later this week for everybody to put that on their calendars. But it's going to be Monday afternoon. I think it's the 3:10 time slot, if I'm not mistaken. So Monday afternoon, make sure nothing else is going on, and join us for Ektron Office Hours on that day instead of Wednesday. And it'll be about an hour, about 50 minutes of office hours, and we'll be talking about some of the best sites that we've either implemented or that we've seen that have been built on Ektron, and really try to show off what the platform is capable of doing.
I mean, I got to do an extra 20 minutes of this? Oh, yeah.
Oh, come on, Ken. You would join every week if I'd let you.
Yeah, I know. Hey, in the beginning, I practically was on every week.
So was I. And now I am on every week. Now it's completely dependent on me. So, all right. So thank you, Dick. I really appreciate you joining today.
Yeah, no problem.
And offering some of the business side of things, because I think that making the argument for tracking is as important as knowing how to do it. So I really appreciate your side of that.
Absolutely, enjoyed it.
And Dan, thank you for the demo. I think it's exciting. I like the use of the data attributes. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's something that you could definitely automate coming out of Ektron as well, so the data can go straight into the markup.
Yep. So, I mean, we're doing it in our web user controls, but there's no reason why you can't implement it across the board.
Yep. And Ken, I always appreciate your sarcasm.
That's what I'm here for
Right,
these days.
You're just the humor now, right? That's all you bring?
Yeah, you're the straight man. I'm the comedy actor.
Got it.
Well, he keeps me on an even keel, too.
Somebody's got to keep everybody else honest, right?
That's true.
All right, so thank you guys for joining. It's certainly a pleasure having you on. And thank you, everybody who watched this week, and hopefully we'll see you online next week as well. And with that, we're going to sign off. So thanks, and we'll see you next time.